much as I could on the chords and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a book chat about Song for Arbonne by Guy Gavriel Kay. For people who have never read any GGK before, we are all first-time GGK readers. And I want to thank John from Talking Story for kind of getting this group all together. I've been meaning to read GGK for years and years. I've always been like a little intimidated, but thanks for really, being the push I needed to start my GGK journey. And we also have Chris Navo. Thanks for coming. Okay, so I wanted to start with some non-spoiler reactions first, and we'll get to spoilers a bit later. But if you have not read it, you should be safe for this first chunk, where we'll just discuss our non-spoiler reactions. All right, so I'm kind of curious. What do you think overall with your first dip into Guy Gavriel Kay? Go for it, John.
Okay. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Like, it was everything. This was everything why I joined BookTube, right? Hanging out, reading the same authors, some of which I love, my all-time faves. Going to bookstores and maybe doing some things to try and find some new authors. Just not happy with those kind of returns of what I was finding. Stumbled onto BookTube, and this is every reason why. Like Josh at Red Fury and Joanna and everybody raving about GGK, and it's like, okay, I gotta join the band, man. I gotta join the club. So I was just thrilled to come up with a couple of people like you two that had never jumped in either. So we could do it together, and I was just completely blown away. I guess I wasn't smart enough, Ben, to be intimidated like you were. I didn't even know how much. I had no expectations of what I was getting into, except it was supposed to just be amazing, and I found it to be absolutely special on pretty much every level.
All right, that's one winner there. We're 1 for 1. Chris, how did it go?
It's going to be weird with this conversation because I think we're going to agree on a lot, because I'm already going to start off by saying, yeah, I agree 100%. This was a unique reading experience for me. This is something just a little bit different that you kind of really sometimes just need, as much as we love fantasy and science fiction, and even just like maybe general historical fiction, getting something with this was just a very unique experience for me. And I think I was for a long time. I have a couple GGK books on my shelf, and I've just never picked them up. I think I've always been intimidated thinking that he was maybe dense or maybe too lyrical in his prose to where I wouldn't be able to really understand it too well, or if it wasn't going to really click with me. But I just breezed through this book. There were times where I read over 100 pages a day, and I don't normally do that. I don't read 100 pages a day. I'm not one of those type of readers. And I was able to do that with this first entry with A Song of Arbonne. Same with John. I remember I believe in summer, Josh from Red Fury and Joanna and Laura from Fantasy Wash were starting with their GGK journey with Lions of Arbonne, and I was going to join in that, and life threw stuff at me, and I didn't get to join. So I was glad I got this opportunity again. But wow, what an experience! I think it was just something totally new, something I wouldn't on paper be maybe drawn to right away. And granted, I wasn't drawn to it right away, but when you dig in, oh my God, yeah, it's something that you just take away immediately when you're done and you think about it.
All right, we're 2 for 2. Yeah.
What about you, Bingus Khan?
Yeah,
bring it home. Bring it home.
Did I like it? Did I gel with it? And well, I don't want to disappoint anyone, but I think this is now one of my favorite books of all time. No, I loved it. I am right there with you, Chris. It was a really special read. Like, it felt different than everything I've ever read, honestly, but especially within the last 6 years when I've been focusing on mostly modern fantasy and sci-fi. and historical fiction too mixed in. This felt different and just kind of extra special. And I was getting towards the end, and I hadn't gotten too emotional at any point. I usually don't get too emotional reading, but often endings do bring out emotion. But I wasn't even near the very end, and I was starting to get like super broken up. And luckily, I was reading alone in a room, and I just had to pause because I was getting to the point where I couldn't see, and man, it was happening a lot, like in the last
You softy.
150 pages.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I was like, "Go, good thing no one is trying to call me right now, or like barging in on the room. Like my wife's away actually, so it was nice because I was just able to be like very vulnerable and alone, and just have a really like man, a lot of tears, more than I've ever had since I was a kid, and reading Harry Potter 7, which came out the summer after I graduated from high school, just the book that kind of marked the end of my childhood. And that was an emotional time for me. But that's been since then. That was like 2007 that a book has drawn this much emotion out of me. And it was a surprise too, because I was reading it like mostly all the way through and really appreciating it, but did not expect for it to hit that hard. Deeply in my soul, as
Man,
hard as it did.
I can't wait to get to the spoiler section to see what part that was.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I can kind of take a couple guesses, but yeah, I'll be curious to see.
So we are 3 for 3, and it looks like some people in the chat have read it and also not read it yet. So we have Shad, who is dipping in, who I think has only read Tigana, and so also needs to read more GGK like us. And Darko from Kindles and Kicks, he just finished this as well, I think. I don't know if he finished or he was about to finish it, but first experience with GGK, just like all of us.
Nice.
Big fan now. And I think some Okie dude, Britain over there, has not read this, but is winking at John about something.
Yeah, we're doing a buddy read on that right now.
Oh, guys, you'll love that book.
I finished it. I loved it. I adored it.
Ooh.
Yeah, I love that book. I'm waiting for the sequel.
It's out.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, starting it tomorrow.
Oh, sweet.
Oh, okay. We'll make sure not to discuss ending stuff while Kindles and Kicks is around.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say, Ben, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping the gun. You got like questions?
Go for it.
It's like when you guys say you were intimidated, and it's like I came in not quite knowing what to expect. But I just thought it was that perfect combination of not only character and beautiful, lyrical, lush language, but at the same time, I mean, this thing had a plot that kept its foot on the accelerator.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
It kept you turning pages. I mean, there was a lot going on plot-wise. It wasn't just like a slow burn character journey or, the beauty of art and expression thereof and what it brings to humanity and a culture. And I mean, all that was there. And all that, I think, is what made it special for all of us and kind of fed our soul, as opposed to just a great, what an amazing adventure, what a great read, what an amazing world. All those things that we get time and time again sometimes. But this did too have that plot, man, that just kept you going. Yeah. And I don't know if I was really looking for that or not, but I found it to be there completely.
I think what really helped was being in primarily, and I'm sure we're going to get into this if I'm jumping the gun too here, but I think a lot of it has to do with the character we follow, because the character Blaze here in this case, and that's not really a spoiler, but he's a stranger to this country of Arbonne himself. So I think following in his footsteps, we get to have that same experience that he does. And whether we, of course, as most of us are authors or artists ourselves, we appreciate the world of Arbonne, whereas Blaze, in the beginning is like totally like this is completely alien to him, especially from, the country he's from.
Yeah. And I found it really surprising where Blaze came from. There is music, there is art, but it's so much more of a patriarchy feel, where it's about
Absolutely. Yeah.
battle hymns and
War. Yeah. I mean,
it's the war drums and the battle hymns, and it's like, as opposed to the juxtaposition of the other side of the coin of what's going on in Arbonne.
And it does. It's like that key moment is the fact that these two countries just have their patron gods or goddesses, in this case, is they're two polar opposites. I mean, you have war and love. So, I mean, having that obviously is going to be some sort of conflict immediately. And the way there's a lot of similarities, I think, and I get a lot of that from with Greek mythology, reading Greek mythology between Ares and Aphrodite. You can't have one without the other in this sense. And I think that there's a lot of similarities to those things because there is a lot of, like, if you want to say, art in war, kind of thing. So I kind of, there's a lot of similarities where I think that's why they clash so much with each other.
And to jump off that of the clash of cultures, which is so prominent, one of the cool things is that we follow a foreigner who's away from his home culture and realizing a lot of his assumptions were not really the case, and everything's much more complex and nuanced than they might have assumed with cultural stereotypes, and I think people on all sides come to realize that is the case, and people are just not fitting their stereotypes or the cliches are supposed to, and they're realizing everyone has this common humanity. We're all a lot more similar than different, and than we thought. And so that was a really beautiful thing about this book, that really centered that theme of kind of travel, or just learning of different perspectives and meeting people from different backgrounds, and coming to break down your assumptions. I love that. That was really really meaningful here.
That was an amazing theme. Yeah, someone that is somewhat running from their own culture, from their experience, right? So they're primed to have their world rocked or their vision expanded in one way or another, and come to find out, the deep-seated cultural anxiety that has been propagated in their country, in their world. Once you get amongst these other people, it's like, man, you're just a squirrel trying to get a nut like me, man. Like, what is, I mean, yes, it's more of a matriarchy as far as the Godhead goes, and it's like there's a lot more freedom and expression and things like that. But it's like all of these things that we were taught to fear or rail against actually has so much to offer, and there's strength in that when I was taught to see weakness, and I just thought the theme of seeing strength and difference as opposed to weakness was just beautiful.
Oh, you put it more eloquently than I could.
Yeah,
oh, well done, you nailed it. One of the things that made this feel different or special was the prose, was the actual writing itself. It wasn't inaccessible. It didn't use a lot of obscure words, but it really had a timeless quality where I felt very immersed in a kind of medieval setting. And the way he just constructed these sentences in just ways that were unexpected, or not commonly constructed sentence structures, and just the way he juxtaposed certain images, and the way he would end chapters on imagery or emotional kind of really deep things. It all just had me stopping and thinking, or going back to reread more than I usually do, where I was like noticing the actual writing, and it was it didn't take me out of the story but I was pausing and rereading and contemplating more than I usually do, because it was so elegant, and he was just not inaccessible at all, but really just lyrical and elegant in a way that I really have never read before.
It's especially with the chapters that take place in Arbonne, there's a very retrospective feel to the way Guy Gavriel Kay writes those chapters, where your reflection, you're having this retrospective of life and everything around you, the people around you, and each chapter kind of felt like you got that introspective of that. And I think that's kind of goes hand in hand to their culture, because they put so much of their history into music and song and lyric. So that's reflective in the words of their songs. And So when you get to like chapters that take place in the other country of
Gorho.
Goulburn, yeah, thank you. Um, those are in present tense, and that was very. At first, I was like, "Wait a minute, are we like in somebody's head, or on that?" Because it was a very one
Oh
person,
wow, I didn't even notice that.
first person present tense. When you are in those chapters, especially in the head of primarily Rosala, and then later on
Okay. Yeah.
the father.
Right. Blaze's father.
So they were both written in present tense, and it's a different way of it threw me off at first, and I wasn't sure if I liked it, but it grew on me, and then I actually appreciated it more because it showed just the difference in those two cultures. And I think in present tense, it's a little more. You're a little more in your action. There's a more action, which is what that country is very representative of, very warlike, moving kind of country. And whereas I feel like Arbonne is more retrospective. That's why we are in past tense with Arbonne.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I remember.
cool. I didn't even notice that.
I didn't either. That's great, man. I noted. I remember on the Discord chat, Ben, when you were asking Zara, who was with us through reading this on the Discord chat, and you were asking, "Hey, is some of his other books this lyrical, or is this about?" Or was that you asking it, Chris? But this is about music, and I'm getting such a lyrical quality from the language.
Yeah. I asked Zara that, and then I asked Laura off screen too, because she had already read the book. Because I just said I was curious if this is just because this book is very representative of music and poem and lyric, if that was just the case in this book, but if it carries over into like books like Lions of Arson or any of the other ones. So
yeah. I mean, it was such a dreamy quality to me. It was so lyrical, and it's like it's so well juxtaposed between the patriarchy run as far as the matriarchy run, this emotionality quotient over here being based in expression, and you had this beautiful lyrical quality. And I found myself, like you say, rereading passages. There were moments, like especially the character of Bertrand, that I just connected with like all out, man. Like it's like, oh my God, if I was a younger man, I would hit someone in the face to get that role. Like I would just love, like that role is just everything. And I found myself rereading passages and things that he said, and just there, when we get into the spoiler section, like there is a moment that will live within my soul forever. This crystal and glistening moment. Ooh. And it was just so beautiful and cinematic. And it wasn't a moment of sweeping battles or anything. It was one of the most intimate moments of expression, but the lyrical, dreamy way it was written, it will forever be a part of me. So I can't wait to get to the spoiler, and you guys can hit me up with what that section was.
No, I would be surprised if this one wasn't one of the more lyrical ones, because the characters a lot of them are musicians or artists in some way, are very sensitive emotionally. Even Blaze, who's not a musician, he's very much kind of just always stuck in the past and nostalgia, or an inner conflict over his past and his decisions. So he's a very sensitive character also. And I just kind of think the overarching tone and atmosphere of all the POVs just had this kind of nostalgic wistfulness and kind of dreamy elegance to it in the writing. And it was really, really beautiful. It just always transported me and put me also in mind of just like being in a nostalgic place, for things in my own past that I, liked looking back on, the things I would do differently, and just had me, it really just hit me personally like that, where, it was reaching me in a way that a lot of my other reads are just more kind of dissociative, where I can just completely fall out of myself and immerse myself in the story, and I'm living just through the characters and going on a kind of roller coaster ride. But this one, I was never really, I think, got to that point. I always felt like I was myself reading this, having a very personal experience. Again, which is so different than what it's normally like for me reading modern fantasy.
Yeah. Did you experience that, Chris? Because I did a bit.
Absolutely. And it's very, and like I was saying in the beginning, it's very odd that for me to, I don't know, it's tough to, it's very, it's tough for me to even label this book fantasy in a way, at least traditionally fantasy. I mean, it is a imaginary world and all that, and there is a little bit of magic, but it's more on the mysticism side, and I think it's more or less, and I think there's even like, not to get into the spoilers yet, but there's even, I think, a scene where the one who practices the magic the most, the priestess even said, it's a little bit, it's more of a hit and miss kind of thing. It's just so deep that it hardly exists kind of thing. And I, this is just something that I'm still surprised that I have not read. I love historical fiction. I love history. I studied it in college. And it's just, I guess this just goes to show that bad that bad, impression of a book that you think is what this book is about, very dense, and it's totally opposite, and it's totally approachable. I was able to just pick this up, understand what I'm reading, not having to really go back unless I really wanted to go back, because something was so beautiful that I was like, whoa, I got to read that again, kind of thing. And try to remember to mark things down. I saw Joanne in the comments, and I'm like, man, this is a great time to be journaling of a book, because this is the book you journal because of all the hit points that really just bam.
Evening, Bert. We're still talking generally about the book in a non-spoiler way, so if you have not read it, feel free to still stick around. We'll get to spoilers probably pretty soon.
I just want go ahead, Ben. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just talking about history. I studied history in college, but a lot of ancient history or more recent history, not a lot of like medieval. So being in this kind of medieval French type setting was felt very new and fresh for me. And I was then curious to go look up kind of what history might have inspired Kay to write this. And it involved like Catholic Church really cracking down on this Christian sect in southern France. And like they basically just went on a kind of genocidal rampage against them. And I was like, okay, Kay's decision to just like be inspired by this, but then set it in a fantasy setting, secondary world, like it allowed him the freedom to not have to stick to any kind of historical actual events or people, and just use it almost as a backdrop, like the setting lightly inspired like his own story with his own characters and his own plotting. And I think he was able to craft his tale exactly how he wanted. And it became a really transcendent kind of story for me, where if you would have just, written a history of this kind of period and this event, it would have been so different and probably nowhere near as affecting for me. So I love what he did, and I think this became what he's really known for. He started doing full kind of portal fantasy with the Fionavar Tapestry like trilogy, and then Tigana was his first standalone after that, and that's like supposed to be pretty fantasy esque. And then it was really this one. Is this the first one after Tigana? Was this? It's early. This one and the Sarantine Mosaic.
This one's early. I know this one's early.
Okay, yeah. Those are all like his early ones. But after Tigana, he kind of just went in this historical fantasy direction, where he's just inspired by certain historical place or events, but then giving it a fantasy twist. And I don't think I've read anything quite like it, and I am a huge fan. Like as a student of history, like I like the kind of semi-grounding in the real world and a cool place I haven't really spent time in before. But then for him to just take it and do his own thing, it was really wonderful.
Yeah. I just want to dovetail off a couple things you guys said when you're talking about characters and you were kind of living like your own experience, not just the character experience. Like I found that to be completely true. Like I say, I completely connected with Bertrand Del Taller. It's like, that warrior poet that I'd gone on an artistic journey myself. But even looking at other characters, like the complete opposite of Taller or Bertrand Blaise, right? Like to see someone not only taught through their culture, but through their family history, to see a different culture this way, or see weakness in this way, or be brought up with these blinders on culturally or family history, and then to eschew that and go off on your own, and be expanded through art. I was able to connect myself and relive moments of my own past when I kind of did kind of the same thing. Like it's almost, he does such an amazing thing of taking these grand plot points and distilling it down to such an interpersonal moment that you can't help but see a mirror to your own soul or your own experiences. And I connected with so many of the characters in that way that made me reflect on my own life, which I found very special. And then the other thing you guys are talking about, like, and I'm going to die on this hill. I don't care if it's a hot take. I'm going to say it again. Like, one of my favorite fantasy series on my list is the Warlord Chronicles, right?
Oh, yeah,
There's more magic in that than this. Like, people have no problem saying this is a fantasy, but that's historical fiction. And it's like, there's way more magic in that than this.
Yeah.
You know? But at the same time, I found this completely magical, and I would have no problem saying it. But when we get into spoilers, I'm sure we'll go over why. It's like, wow, it is grounded as grounded can be. I felt.
Yeah. We've been talking about the beautiful lyrical prose that's elegant and evocative, brings out emotion in us, the really deep, nuanced character work. I mean, this character work, some of the most nuanced that I've come across, outside of, similar to Robin Hobb. And so it's in that category of just like amazingly deep, nuanced, complex characters all over the place. No one feels like a cardboard cutout. But John, when you mentioned at the beginning that this is wrapped around a really just tense, suspenseful plot, and that the narrative events that we're doing, time jumps, like we're always like important, interesting, tense things are happening. There's not too much downtime. There's not a lot of just exposition where we're getting, lots of world building thrown at us. It's all just integrated into these plot events that are moving us along. And I think for a political plot, this book is one of the best I've ever read at setting up the players in the politics. Like, what are the political stakes? What is the relevant history of these places that have brought us to this point? And I feel like we only learned like the bare essentials to get a handle on it, but I had such a strong handle on kind of the map and kind of who the minor players were. But then I felt like these were real places, and Arbonne, especially where we spend most of our time, I came to just love the setting. Like, rarely do I care about a political plot for, how it turns out for just the setting of the place. Usually I care because characters are wrapped up in the plot and I want things to go well for the characters. But here I cared about the place. Like, I didn't want, Arbonne to be invaded or taken over. I wanted Arbonne to thrive because Kay just had me spending so much time there, and it felt like such a really rich, just important place to kind of, keep as it was. And so I was amazed that I cared about the places here. I just for a political plot, it was so easy to understand like all the different places and people. I've read a lot of political plots where just the author does not do a good job at all of establishing kind of why we should care about anything going on, and throwing lots of names out. And then, but this was the polar opposite of that. I thought it was a spectacular political plot.
Yeah. Do you want time on that, Chris?
Yes. Ben, I had the exact same reaction you did to, like, when this is like a country I did not want to see like invaded, turn ugly in a sense. There is conflicts that are some of the main plot points to this book that happen just in Arbonne itself. A lot of people feuding with each other, and that's happening in Arbonne, not the invading countries. So, but it still was like, it was still such a beautiful place, and I think we all look for that in our real lives, just that place that's just full of beauty and art and music and fun and laughter and good times, and whether they're they're on the sexual level or or just good hanging out with my buds, that we can talk about art and music, and you just didn't want to see that wrecked. And oh man, that just like really just impacted me so much. And I was like, wow, if this is like really just really affecting me on this kind of level. And I agree that the just that theme of just beauty, but then there is that plot. There is, some definite multiple plots going on here that you don't want to see happen, in conflicts you don't want to see happen, but they do. And yeah.
Yeah, I for me, it's like even when it's well done in some books, like I can follow all the machinations and I see the motivations of the political intrigue, right? But it doesn't hit the same. And I think part of that is because the beautiful tapestry this is. We're seeing a world. Number one, he's 4 steps ahead because it's France. And it's like we all, what a dreamy, beautiful place. Like again, this connected to me because I remember walking the streets of Paris, and it's like there's a Rodin sculpture on the corner because they ran out of museum space. It's just art is everywhere. Beauty is everywhere. The aesthetic is unbelievable. So we already kind of started 4 steps ahead in that way.
Southern France too, with nicer weather.
Right? Oh my God, I haven't even been there, but I can imagine. So like, but the tapestry he has, like we're seeing these even from the very beginning, even from the prologue, right? We started off, we see these moments in time. We see these moments in the history of this place at this fulcrum point of everything starts to pivot and change. And we start to become connected to the characters that are moving within that pivot. So not only do we not want to be protective of this beautiful dreamlike place, but we're starting to connect to those characters that start popping up again in different moments of their life as time goes by in these fulcrum points of history. And we start to be protective of them because they're woven through this tapestry of this magical place at the same time. It's absolutely masterful. And what I wasn't ready for plot-wise, and I'm sure we'll get into some of this in spoiler time, is what an architect of plot. Every breadcrumb he lays down, he pays off. Stuff that I had completely forgotten about. Yeah. And at the end, you're like, I'm gobsmacked. He paid that off, and I didn't even remember as a reader. So his architecture of plot, his pace of acceleration through plot, and his tapestry of wrapping those fulcrum moments of the world around his characters that make you buy in and care, and then reflect and see yourself. I mean, he's a master, absolute master.
Yeah. I'm right with you. It's this amazing combination of that detailed long-term plotting, intricate plotting, and the character work that gets us to care so deeply about so many, the main POV cast, the secondary side characters, and then the setting work, the theme work, and then it's all done in his elegant wording and prose styling, and it made for a special read. Like this one standalone novel, it felt to me the same kind of experience I have usually over the course of a long series.
Yes.
Like usually it takes me a really long time to get like emotionally invested with series. Maybe I'm pretty invested, at the second book, the third book in, and then we go on this long journey. And man, we had all that in one book. That's not even that, chunky of a book. Just the efficiency of the storytelling on an epic scale was mind blowing to me. I am so impressed by everything. But we should get into the spoilers soon, so we can start talking about the actual plot details.
Yeah, absolutely.
But any last non-spoiler thoughts, Chris?
No, yeah, I definitely. I wanted to touch on that about standalone books because I love series, because I like being invested in character, and I like going on a journey with that character. And I think that was a big worry for me going into Song of Arbonne. I wasn't going to get maybe invested enough to get to the end of the characters, and only at the very end will I be really caring about these characters and it's over. Or opposite, which is kind of the fact, I was going to love the character work here so much and the world, and when I was done, am I going to be thirsty for a sequel or something? I want to go back to this world. And
exactly.
why I do want to go back to this world, I am satisfied with how this ends.
Completely.
I don't need it. I don't need any more. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a good standalone book. I got full fulfillment from this book. Characters, plot, the world, the themes.
Yeah.
I got it all. And when I ended the book, I was reflective and I was like, I was satisfied. If you carried this book further, it would probably ruin the experience. And bam, that's it. I was like, thrilled. And
Amen.
I
Amen.
hope the rest of
Completely.
the standalones are
Completely. Yeah.
All right. If you have not read the book, now is a good time to leave this chat and come back to it after you've read this masterpiece. I know we've had a few in here who haven't read it. Grufe didn't get around to it yet. And then Belemris also has not tried GGK yet. So yeah, if you have not read Song for Arbonne, we're going to be talking about spoilers, lots of little details coming up. So
and I feel completely confident saying those two will love GGK.
Yeah, as long as you go into it just expecting it to be just a little bit more lyrical than what you normally would read in fantasy, a little bit slower paced than the high octane stuff. If you go into, I have a hard time seeing anyone not having a good time with this.
Yeah.
Oh okay. Yeah. Grufe's getting out of here.
Okay. All right.
You guys will love it.
We're about to find out what made Ben cry.
Oh yeah. Okay. Kindles and Kicks also has to leave.
Well, thanks for coming, guys.
Bye, Darko.
Yeah. Have a good time finishing that off. All right. So we should probably wait a little bit before we talk about the very end. But
hey, while we're waiting,
prologue. Can we talk about
Yes.
While we're waiting, if anyone's haven't logged off yet, while we're waiting, we're gonna do another GGK re, right?
Oh,
I'm for it. I'm definitely for it.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so I thought we're going Lines of Al Rassan next, right? Is that
yes?
Okay.
Oh wow, we're going right to one of the tougher ones. Yeah, I was just at a used bookstore that had this.
Oh, nice.
The last light of the sun. This is also one of the earlier ones, like not from like the last 15 years. I think it's a Viking inspired one.
You had the hardback of Arbonne back there too. I noticed.
I had a terrible paperback with all bold print. Oh, the one that John has. Does that have bold face?
Oh,
yeah,
dude, this print is
it's this is like old school 90s bold.
Yeah.
I hated reading that so much. I was lucky. I was at a used bookstore and I found the mass market. And so I was having a slow time reading it just because I wasn't enjoying reading the bold-faced print. And it was hard for me to just use the audiobook too, because I needed to really spend time with the print book for this. So I luckily got this and then started to read it faster because this print was just normal. But then I loved it so much that I had to just order the hardcover.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I love this cover.
Yeah,
that is gorgeous.
That cover.
Yeah, gorgeous cover. Yeah.
Oh man. Oh wait, could we? Well, I want to start with the prologue actually.
Just
to make our way through the book a little bit. This was one of my favorite starts to a book ever. I was so attached to Alice. I was so attached to her so quickly. When I learned after the prologue that she's not going to be around in this book because she died in childbirth off screen, I was like, oh no, I loved that character from the prologue so much, so immediately attached. She had so much vivacity, so much spark, and man, I was so fooled. I thought she was getting kidnapped, and then she'd all arranged it to have a love affair with Bertrand, and then how that was handled, where they're both kind of nervous, they're both from nobility, but they both really like each other, and they're both nervous, and the way that prologue, just the whole way it went. It was one of the greatest starts to a book I've ever read.
Absolutely, completely. Yeah. I thought she was going to be the lead. I thought, oh, well, we're going to see if this love affair worked. If it didn't work, I saw this going a completely different way. And I was completely all in on that character. But, because of that, the loss that Bertrand carries throughout this entire book.
It means so much to us. It means so much. Yeah.
It's one of the major plot.
You don't have it without that. Without that fulcrum point of him losing his love,
Yeah. And it's real to us because we saw from her POV, we saw how, incredible their first moment together was, and the spark that Alice was. We have a sense, if we combine that with her supposed beauty. We have a sense that this is someone that was worth Bertrand just pining for, his entire adult life, and no one else is measuring up like that. Because of that prologue, everything else later with Bertrand just has so much more impact, and Blaise doesn't know about it, and so he views Bertrand from the outside, doesn't really understand until later, and he learns. Oh man, it was such an incredible choice to do that, because it helps us understand Bertrand's depression and the enmity he has between him and Urte, who and so like we feel like we get that, we understand what's going on there.
Yeah. And I love that. And one of you guys said the feuding going on in Arbonne, and you're not even. And I by the end of it, right? Like at the end, that those feuds, those lines that they've drawn between the two kind of noble houses that start from this tryst in the prologue. I mean, it took me back to, to Hamlet, where the nobility is so embroiled in everything that's going on in that castle that no one realizes that Fortinbras is going to rain down on them by the end. Like they just completely lose sight of that. And I just absolutely love the connective tissue I saw between this and the classics like that.
And this just goes to show, I mean, again, I think how there's this richness to this character in the beginning that you just felt like you said, John, this is going to be the one we're going to be watching and following through the whole story. And, this is coming from somebody who's read George R. R. Martin, and we all know with Ned, and I apologize to anybody who has not read Game of Thrones, but but this is at the very beginning. This is one chapter of her.
It's a prologue.
It's just one I know, and it's just one thing, and we're already connected with this character, and it was just completely unexpected. And I think, but I was like, oh man, I want to know more about her, and it was just.
But didn't that prologue set up everything too? Because of
the
fire, the passion of the romance, and it's like everything stems from that tryst, that moment. Like wow.
Yeah, you're right, and so many things that happen later, and when we get to the battle scene, that was like the determining factor for everything, because of the conflict between Urte and Bertrand. Yeah.
And then talk about Kay returning back to things in this book, not letting little details go. One of the things that got me emotional, out of the many, many things in the whole like ending section that was getting me emotional, was them returning to that little cabin, and like Bertrand is there, and then Blaise finds him there, and man, that what got me. And like, we were back there, and Bertrand said, and then Bertrand leaves because he notices that Ariane and Blaise are kind of having a moment, and he's like, okay, I'll let you two, talk with each other here. And that just like the setting there, like, oh my God.
But throughout the entire book, you had that character of Blaise that, again, leaves his family, leaves his lineage, leaves what he's taught family history-wise, leaves what he's taught culture-wise, and then he comes under the wing, somewhat early on in the book of Bertrand de Teller, and sees a different way, a different father figure, a different expression and passion, and still one of the greatest swordsmen, and he has all that too, but at the same time is pining for the passion and the love of the things that make fighting worth fighting for, and that last moment you're talking about of them just like hanging on the porch, as it was just such a beautiful father-son moment to me. I just love, and again, you can see maybe if your father wasn't around, like, again, reflecting in my own life, I didn't have enough time with my father as I would have wanted, but you always find those stand-ins to help you grow the way you hopefully want to grow. And it's like seeing those moments and reflecting upon yourself through art. It was just rife through the book with this for me. Absolutely just rife with it.
And then even early on, we get introduced. So I thought we were going to be following Ellis, or Elise, however you say that. But then we are following Blaze in this like nighttime raid to capture back this troubadour, and from the Rienne's island, and it's very like a mysterious thing that's going on. We don't really understand it. Blaze seems like this kind of cynical mercenary, and we don't really learn his story for a while. Like we don't know his part in all this. It kind of takes time for us to learn, kind of, but we have a sense like that he's really honor bound, that he has this really strong sense of personal honor, and that always is very something that attracts me to characters and gets me really invested in them when they have that really kind of virtuous sense of honor that they don't want to break for any reason whatsoever. And I don't even know when we learn that Blaze is basically like the noble son in exile of a bigwig in Gorho, but it was not early on.
Yeah,
I
it was
remember,
not early on.
Yeah,
No.
it wasn't early on.
when we finally learned it, it was a real kind of light bulb moment. We're like, oh wow, okay, this isn't just a minor little character in the world here. This is someone who could be an important
he's not some
political player.
mercenary.
Yeah.
He's more
Yeah.
to him.
But didn't that strike you guys? Like that for me, tonally, I wasn't ready for that. Like I had this passion and this romance of the prologue, and then we kind of go straight to like that Black Ops mission moment, kind of, And I was like, whoa, this, GGK's got his foot on the accelerator. The plot's going to drive. Like this is, I mean, it was surprising to me that it was that type of book, or that started out with that kind of momentum.
And there was some lightness to it too. Like there was the, he was raiding this place with some people that weren't hardened soldiers, and Luth, I think, was like he was giving them away, and he wanted to be left on the island, basically. Like what a great little minor throwaway character there.
I very rarely just have like laugh out moments with a book, and I was just laughing at Luth and just like bungling everything. Yeah. And Ben, you were mentioning earlier in our non-spoilers about, and John, about like how even the littlest things, like you have to really pay attention. And these characters that seem kind of one-off, like because both of these both the prologue and this chapter 1 has characters we don't see throughout most of the book until we get to the end. And then everything comes full circle at the end with both Elise and
Luth.
Luth. Yeah.
And, oh my God, what an incredible ending note! Where
and
like,
you know what, guys, I think I guessed it. I think I guessed.
Oh wow! I did not. I did not at all. I thought the arrow. I thought
when
the
they
arrow
mentioned
did come
when
out
they
of
mentioned the
the
arrow
sky.
with owl others, I was like, okay, it came from probably the Priestess Island, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute,
No,
Wow.
I completely was bamboozled.
I kept expecting him to come back. I did kept expecting.
Oh, see, I thought for me, it's like I'm so used to seeing like background players, and it's like he lulls you to sleep, right, with Elise in the prologue, and then you've got this band of brothers that has that banter and that fun and the Black Ops kind of raid to kind of kick it off, and then Blaze moves on from there, and you're kind of following Blaze, and it's like, some people are coming back around, but then I kind of think, well, we've let go of some background players, but isn't that amazing moment of theme when it's like Blaze's entire journey and what he learns of the difference being more strength than weakness, and it's like these people that were completely incompetent in the beginning that you maybe have written off and forgotten about are so important. There are no bit players. There are no background players. And that's great. I did not see it coming, Chris, because I thought, this is going to be a little bit of that mysticism they're going to leave up in the air, maybe because
I didn't get it. I didn't piece together what. I mean, it wasn't my first choice, but I was like, I did get it before we got to the answer of the King Killer, and I was just
getting that explained was so satisfying. Like how he was told to go out on the one side of the island and practice shooting up and at a target, and then doing it from a tree, and then seeing him waiting in the tree. Like, man, that was such an amazing little ending note. I love that. I love that so much. That was such a little fun little character too. Like the person who was just not at all wanting to be like a soldier, and like was so happy when he got left behind on the island, like and could be a priest. Man, that was a great little character. And then just even moving on from there, there was some really interesting stuff. Like we're with Blaze at this kind of minor noble of Arbonne's castle, like in the mountains, and that's where he meets Bertrand, and he's like trying to stop Bertrand from having an affair with the noble's wife, and that's how they meet, and they have this really heartfelt conversation. But Bertrand has to like knock him unconscious and then, but like Blaze still like respects him and is convinced to go work for him. Like that was such an interesting way for them to meet and for their relationship to be established. And these early times where Blaze is like becoming one of Bertrand's like main soldiers, and he's like friendly with the other ones like Valeri. Like I really enjoyed this whole beginning section. It had a kind of cozy vibe to it where that real high stakes drama stuff has not occurred yet. And oh well, I guess a little of it did, because Blaze was going to Bertrand's castle and then he got like attacked on the road, which is another event that had like repercussions after, like not just a throwaway event, but you know, the guy, he killed his brother and was getting angry, and you're like, with Blaze, you're indignant, like, well, he was attacked. What is Blaze supposed to do?
What are you gonna
do? He's like, well, he had an arrow wound, so you shot him from afar. You didn't give him an honorable fight. You're like, oh, okay, that's kind of true. So it's like, but like little things like that became complicated instead of just like black and white, clear cut, like, and these little details all play a role. But this early section was just kind of like entrancing me. I was just so enjoying kind of getting things established, learning some of the key players, traveling with Blaze through Arbonne. Man, I really enjoyed this beginning section.
Oh, that scene you're talking about when he and Blaze are on this, Blaze and Bertrand are on the stairwell, and you know, Bertrand is coming back down after he's, you know, tried to salve the wounds of this hole in his soul since he lost his love so many years ago by tryst after tryst after tryst, and he's talking to him, looking out the window, saying, "I never thought I'd live this long," and nothing.
Oh, that's where he says like, I've been searching for like 30 years for someone to measure up to my lost love. Yeah.
I read that and it's like, oh my God, to play that scene. I would do anything to play that scene. Like I did a reading of it on my channel because it's like, oh, I love that scene is everything.
Oh wow. Was that the one you were talking about?
Yeah. That was one of them, but that's not the one I was talking about. But that scene, like this aging Lothario warrior poet realizing who he is in his own skin at that moment and understanding he'll never be able to make the pain go away. I mean, just wow! What the pathos of that? Like, just loved it so much.
Yeah, and it's kind of depressing that he's still trying to like, you know, salve the wound by just having all of these like one night stand kind of affairs, and you know that doesn't seem like too healthy for him emotionally. Like he's just trying to, like it was interesting. Like you're right. There's so much kind of emotional nuance and depth there where. Seems like it, like, you know, in a theater, actors would have a lot to dig into.
Yeah. Well, and in his culture like that, you know, love and expression in that way is so, I mean, what in his culture, I would think that's what he's expected to get over this hurt with, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's like both cultures somewhat have, well, I don't know if that's entirely healthy. You know, they both have that, like in that, like you're saying, there are questions in so many layers.
It's so natural for them that it becomes numb, and I think in a sense, and it kind of there's kind of like a darkness to having all of this like open passion and all that, because I think sometimes because it's such an all the time experience, you kind of lose a little bit of that, a little maybe in a way spontaneity and kind of like having that, you know, that emotional pop, because it's all the time for them, you know, especially for somebody like Bertrand.
I just want to acknowledge McScarfield's comment here. This is a little interesting. The characters could be read as variants, scales, interpretations of a musical piece.
Oh, wow.
A nice little thing to chew on there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I love that.
And McScarfield's giving some history lessons in the comments too.
I've been reading some of those.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's
definitely pretty cool.
The historical understanding probably, you know, increases your appreciation of Guy Kay's work so much. But even just if you don't know any of that, I think you could just come into this completely blind, like I did, not knowing anything about the inspirations or really this time period in Europe, and
There's
just
some great
getting lost in the tale and the characters and the plotting. But then all of a sudden, to move through the book a little bit, we get a POV out of nowhere that is Liso, who is this joggler, the singer, and we're in this scene at the festival. We're in this tavern where all the jogglers and troubadours are gathering, and it's their kind of place. And she's getting dunked in their kind of
in the wine.
usual like
yeah in the barrel
like,
of
festivities, and then people are singing there, and like that was a really cool perspective. Like she was this very like impulsive kind of character. It felt very different than the other ones that we followed, and just very younger and energetic and like emotionally high strung, and just a nice little interesting other perspective we got from a singer. And it's not a main character, but really I really appreciated that character like throughout the book, just returning to her every so often.
Yeah, it was more kind of like a everyday kind of character. She's kind of like that everyday character. She's not really into the royalty or anything like that, except for maybe performances or anything like that. So kind of getting that, and we get more into the musical trope of it through her eyes too, which I was really happy to explore, which I thought was almost going to be the entire book when I think of A Song for Arbonne, and I think, oh, it was going to be like characters like her, and I appreciated. I think it was a refreshing character to have, a very real, down to earth character to have, and like most of the characters in this book, I fell for her right away. I was like, oh, I loved her friendship with Blaze, and just like Blaze in this whole first path, especially this whole intro with these two characters, and she's just infatuated with him, and to the point where,
but she also like hates him. She thinks
right
he's
away.
Like she thinks he's this terrible, Gorho foreigner, like masculine foreigner who doesn't appreciate art and music, and yeah, so it's a funny little misunderstanding at the beginning. But I love how through her perspective we get like some background about like joggler and troubadour culture, and how that all works, and just insight into that side of things was so cool. And then to hear her think about the other singers and the songwriting, and then like when she ended up singing like Blaze to sleep, that was such a touching scene. And man, there was some great stuff with her character, but also wonderful. It was cool that we got a really pivotal scene through like her perspective, overhearing Blaze and his friend talking. Like we could have easily had that scene through Blaze's perspective, but it was cool to just like get that from the outside, because we're not totally sure like what's going on between Blaze and this like foreigner from I forget his name, Brodell. So like getting it from her perspective, where we can't hear Blaze's inner thoughts, was a kind of cool little plot device there in that
absolutely
scene.
But,
because in a sense we got to sit back and watch that scene play out, because it was just
right right, absolutely. We wasn't
interrupted with inner thought. We just got to
we were completely in the audience there. And what I loved about Le Sol is a couple things. We got to play that theme from the other diametrically opposed way, right? We have Blaze, culturally and familially taught to look at another culture one way, and now we see the other way doing the exact same thing in Le Sol when she starts encountering Blaze. And then what I loved about her entire storyline and her arc, right, in this place that I know she wasn't royalty per se, but in this place where artists are put upon this platform, to watch her become one of the most important artists of her time. And you kind of got somewhat of a behind the scenes biography of the coming up of one of the biggest, most important artists in this place of that time. And then how she's able to comment about what we've all lived through in the book at the end because of her journey and what she's become by the end. I thought was just stunning, because the art is so important to this culture. So you had to have that, I felt.
Yeah.
Oh, welcome one of the great singers of praise of GGK, Jake Bishop. He's here now. Yeah, so you missed the non-spoiler part where we all discussed how little we actually enjoyed this one, and how just did not make a mark.
Barely,
No, basically,
barely made it through.
you missed us all talking about how it was a special, unique reading experience that became some of our favorite books of all time. Definitely in my case. So yeah, we're doing pretty well. We have a lot to dig into. We're not very far into the actual book yet.
Yeah.
Oh, Belltube has not read this yet, right? Stopping by to say hi.
Yeah.
Second in line on my GGK. Yeah, we're in spoilers now.
Come on,
Brian. So you better watch out.
We're gonna ruin it for you.
Brian, have you read Lions? Let us know.
He might have hopped off already, I bet.
Yeah.
Oh man, so yeah, that character Liso was kind of a surprise getting that POV, but a delightful one. And that night of celebration, the way like he also established that other guard character of Valeri really well as like this person who's Blaze really likes and jokes around a little. Like I'm already pretty attached to Valeri, and then all of a sudden we're going and celebrating by the river, and Valeri goes out on the river and gets shot from afar, and he's like dying of a poisoned arrow, and I'm like, oh my god, like Valeri's had like 5 minutes of screen time, but I really
that's it.
Really don't want him to die.
No, another one.
Yeah, and it's like hey, we've already been taught right from the prologue, like
Yeah. Oh, Jake, we hit Luth already. We chatted about loving Luth's bumbling in the nighttime raid scene, and then how he came back around. GGK didn't forget him and played his important role at the end. Oh, we all really loved Luth. Very iconic there.
Amazing.
Very much.
Man, the night turned from the celebratory fun to just this drama and assassination. It turned so quickly. The stakes got ramped up, and then Blaze feeling like he knows who this was. Like I was so interested. I'm like, oh my god, like who is this? Like, is it a friend? Is it a foe? Like, who is Blaze going to see? And then we follow him through Liso, and he has this conversation, and I'm like, man, is he gonna get really angry at this guy? Like, is he? And then we realize they're really close friends, and this guy Riddell just viewed this as a job he's getting paid a lot to do, but I like wanted to hate him so much because he was trying to go after Bertrand and then maybe killed Valeri, who we already like, but it was hard to dislike Rodel there, and Blaze was having this really deep conversation with him, and I love that Blaze also didn't give away that he didn't shoot Bertrand, because he realized that if he had told him that Rodel might still have gone after Bertrand while he was in the city, but he was going to let Rodel go back away from the city to collect the bounty and feel like he succeeded, and he'll be humiliated. And but that was such a cool scene and interesting and just high stakes. I was worried Lisa was gonna get caught and found out. But then she confronted Blaze right after. And was like, I just heard all this. And that was not smart, because if it was someone that was not as honor bound as Blaze, like she would have been in trouble. But man, that was such a crazy turn in that whole chapter, from this festival celebration to the assassination attempt, and that cool scene, just expanding the political aspects too of now this noble person from the other state, Carezze, the Italian kind of state there. I forget the name of it. Was
Parenza?
Oh, Portezza, yeah. Portezza. Yeah. So then we get like starting to introduce that side of things. And man, this whole section of the book was starting to ramp up the intrigue, and just like at no point are we getting just like overwhelmed with the details of the amount of players, but it's like slowly, chapter by chapter, we're getting more and more of the pictures being painted. And and Blaze is now starting to think more about like his mysterious past with this Luciana DeLonghi, and he was like living in Portezza, and so he's starting to have some thoughts about this. Like he can't get over this woman, so we're intrigued about like what happened there, and eventually we learn all about that. And she comes back, of course. Like I did expect her to show up and play a part at some point, but just like we don't rush it, we take our time. Like Blaze just for hundreds of pages, we'll have a thought every now and then about Luciana, and then finally we meet her, and we understand how she messed him up so badly.
Yeah, we get it. Yeah, we absolutely get it. Yeah, I just thought he was such a, how you talk about Ben, it's like the tonal shift there. Like it just as far as pace and tone, he's such a master. It just foot on the accelerator, can go from tone to tone, and I love how we really start to see a little bit of the hint of the background of Blaze, as you say there, and it's kind of the same. We get the same kind of moments of passion that we see with Bertrand and everything on this side. So we start to already see that theme of they're more alike than they want to admit, or we start to see that come together.
And
you also go for it, Chris. Go for it.
Oh no, I was just gonna add to that. It's just I think it goes back to what we were saying about how we don't want this beauty of this Arbonne to be ruined, and it so when things like these conflicts come up and this assassination comes up, it takes us, it's like really just like, oh man, it makes us more invested in what's going to happen next, because we want everything to work out okay. We were rooting for everybody to just enjoy themselves and have a great time at this this festival, and to have that just ruined by this moment, and it just like intensifies it. But we get that we get those moments of like Blaze now, and we're like kind of getting an understanding. There's a history here with these two characters, with him and Rugo, and it was nice it was just great when we get these like kind of like conflicts, but they're with people that know each other and are friends with each other.
And not by coincidence either. Like we later learn that Blaze's father orchestrated that, probably specifically because he was Blaze's best friend, and he knew that, and then so there are all these machinations behind the scenes, but there's so many like really intricate reasons why everything's happening the way it does here. But can we talk a little about Gorho and Blaze's father? Like when that
first scene, oh my god,
the scene in the royal court of Gorho, where it's like the king Adamar is just like this completely douchey, misogynistic a-hole, and we start to learn like the history. We get fed bits and pieces of like how we got to this point of like we keep on hearing Ireson Bridge mentioned, and that's like this touchstone moment in like the recent history of Gorho, and the king died there, and then his son took over, and seeing how like his advisor, what's Blaze's father's name? It's
Chris has it written down.
Maybe Jake
Admar.
That's Admar. The king. That's the king.
King Admar.
But then the first elder of Gorho, Blaze's father, it's
Galbert.
Galbert de Garçon. Yeah. Man, he was also terrifying. He seemed like in that scene like he was kind of pulling the strings of the king, and then we see the king is like looking over at Rosala, who is like this other guy's wife, who we learn is Blaze's brother. Like earlier, we hear Blaze, I think, thinking at some point like that he had a quick little tryst with his brother's wife, and we don't even know at that point. I think that like Blaze is like a noble son of some house of Gorho. But then when we get introduced to Rosala, I think it becomes clear at some point, like you can infer that like that was the person that Blaze must have had an affair with. And as you start to put some of those pieces together about Blaze's backstory, it's just like things click into place and be like, oh my God, this is such a complex kind of backdrop, personal and political mixing all in messy ways.
It shows the opposite. It shows how quickly Kay can create lovable, like very interesting characters to enjoy and love and follow, and then immediately you just need a couple paragraphs about a character who you just hate immediately. It's like, okay, well, we antagonist for sure. And I definitely want to call out our fourth reader here, Zara, who couldn't join us, but she stated in that in our Discord when we were talking about this, how uncomfortable chapter 4 was, and it was an uncomfortable read.
It was not an easy read,
but it's very. I think it was just. I think it was just perfect to really draw how uncomfortable we are going to feel with these characters, how ugly they are, and what a contrast it is to the beauty of Arbonne.
McScarfield's right. It did feel like adult Joffrey, but with less power. So he wasn't as because it did seem like the Blaze's father was the actual power.
I get a Duke Harkonnen feel to him a little bit too.
Oh yeah. But I'm completely on board with you, Chris. Like we go from this magical locale of Arbonne, and then we are smack dab in the middle of a place where patriarchy has run so far beyond toxic masculinity, like it's to the over the precipice, right? And it just disgusting, and like all of a sudden we have all these complex characters, and we see inner turmoil, and we can understand and sympathize and empathize, and then this dude is a black hat. They ain't no way around it.
I was glad because the king was such like a mustache twirly, true like evil kind of villain like Joffrey. I was glad, as McSarfield's saying, is that like he's not the main antagonist, but it's the multifaceted master manipulator, as McScarfield puts it, Blaze's father, who's the real villain, and that made it feel more threatening. I think as we got towards the end, that this actual like clever manipulator who's a religious fanatic and who is on this genocidal tear.
And that's the scariest part, right? Like he thinks he's absolutely, he looks at the mirror and thinks he's doing the best thing for his conscience. He's doing the absolute best thing for his world. And that, I mean, right, that defines such a true villain when they're that far off the reservation with that thought. And what a great theme of how far fanaticism can go unchecked, right? I mean, it's interesting you bring up Dune because the same type of themes play out there. But what a great black hat. Great black hat.
But the uncomfortable chapter, I think, did a really great job of establishing how threatening that environment was for Rosala. So like it made me feel like so afraid for Rosala, and that she is like, when she's contemplating running and getting out of there, I'm like, yes, get out of there, go.
Out.
Like when she escapes, like, man, those were some tense scenes where we realize she's there, and then we see her journey of like, going with these people on a carriage when she's really pregnant and going through the mountains, and she finally makes it there. Like man, it was such a relief that she made it to.
I thought she was going to get caught. I thought she was going to get caught. I was like, man, that was...
And then she gets actually taken care of there, and the people there, like the Countess Sinia de Barbentine, like she takes it upon herself to actually take care of Rosala and realizes how dangerous that'll be, but knows it's like the right thing to do. And like I loved how Rosala felt at home, or at least protected and safe in Arbonne, and the people there were happy to take care of the baby. And man, that scene in Gorho was so terrifying, but like from Rosala's perspective too, like, man, it was horrifying, and you felt for her and just want her to get out. But it did establish too the real differences between like that the patriarchal royal court in Gorho. Like if they take over Arbonne, like it is not going to go well for the people of Arbonne at all. And so, but interesting, like you see the common people of Gorho often like aren't as fanatical as the Blaze's father.
I think you sense in the court scene how uncomfortable everybody is with what's going on in that room.
Particularly Blaze's brother.
Yeah.
What a tragic character, Shakespearean level tragic character there.
And I'm glad, you can tell that there is a culture that's very patriarchal there, that it just exists, but not to the point where they treat their women like, garbage, everybody, I think it was shown that, these are just select few people, of course, unfortunately the leaders that do these things to, especially to, how their thoughts on women and in general, and art and music and all that.
Yeah, but
It was so exciting. I found myself caring about Gorho, and towards the end of like, wow, a lot of people like are not unhappy with the king and with the elder and the signing of that treaty and the way
Right.
they gave away part of their lands and had to leave their homes and I started to care and hope that Blaze would be able to rally, a part of Gorho. And when he was doing that and got people to turn sides, like that was really exciting and it just really, really cool political stuff going on with Gorho too. Like that it wasn't so just cut and dry. It's like this whole country's evil invading, like, the good Arbonne. But
go ahead.
Oh no, I just wanted, before I forgot, mention Blaze's father's plan with the whole treaty. Like he says, like the treaty, and it was his master plan to like get the funds and the time to be able to invade Arbonne. And so like the place that they were fighting against, they would have peace. He would get money to be able to invade Arbonne. But then towards the end, he's like, well, that was only one of my objectives. If I fail at that, like at least you, Blaze, can become, on the throne of a Garcon can be on the throne. And I didn't believe him. I thought he was just making that up as he went along there at the end. That like he's just finding some way to claim victory.
Yeah,
with this master plan.
I feel like it was a very like the unreliable narrator kind of feel to this. Was this really his whole master plan? Is he just saying it was as some sort of like final redemption for his son kind of thing? Or, I don't know. I had a hard time believing him, that he set this whole thing in motion. I think it was just a circumstance, and he sees that as an opportunity for himself. But, I could be wrong, and I don't know if that gets answered or not,
This is interesting that Ms. Harfield says this is a little bit less morally gray than he normally gets. So I'm already thinking that this is not, black and white, good versus evil. So if everything's a little more gray going forward, it'll certainly be extremely nuanced.
Yeah. That's a great point you made, Chris, about it's interesting how absolute power corrupts absolutely in this patriarchy. It's not the everyman or the people, and I love how we see that by some of the soldiers even going over to Blaze's side, like this has got to end. I loved every bit of that. And Barbataine, looking at the leaders over on this side after we've seen the leaders of Gorhot, it's like it really makes you appreciate the leaders over here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, like, oh, like if more, women were in positions of power, like throughout history, we probably would have had less war, most likely. Although that's not always the case.
It does make you kind of have those thoughts, though, right? Like you do have those thoughts. The thing with Blaze's dad at the end there, he's literally trying to take like, I instigated the whole thing to make Rosala run away. Everything was a master plan of his. Yeah. And it's like, I found it interesting in that moment where I just saw that as such an amazing character moment for Blaze. Because, our fathers are always, block out the sun, larger than life. And, he has to overcome that feeling. He has to overcome the grand schemer that he sees his father as, to take the place of it and become more of a leader and ruler that this journey has taught him, like is Barbataine and Bertrand and these people that see a wider view of things as opposed to the fanaticism of his father.
Yeah.
And he's gotten a chance to learn all that by being away from home. Like he's been away from that influence of his father, and grown and taken on new perspectives and matured as his own independently in a way that his brother never got the chance to. Like his brother, who was the king's champion, but then had to go back home to the family castle and run that as the heir. And the father, we learned, never really respected him, and he like respected Blaze more and wanted Blaze to be like follow him into the clergy. But like he just became like a kind of drunkard and someone who like his wife Rosala didn't respect, and kind of seems like he had this kind of more like a good heart, but then just kind of never got the chance like Blaze did to go off and live outside of the influence of his father. And then one of the things that got me emotional towards the end was that his brother, like initially I thought he was going to turn towards Blaze when he and Blaze like had captured the castle, Blaise had captured the castle, and the father got away, and he wanted his brother's help to capture father. But I was like, no, I'm still loyal to our father, and I'm gonna go follow him. I thought the brother was gonna turn towards Blaise at that moment, but to finally, when that happened, like at the critical moment when the battle's about to take place, and the brother just got fed up with the king, like going like who's interested in his wife, and he like wanted to defend his own honor. And then when the brother like recaptures some of his youthful warrior kind of spirit and takes down the king, like jumps onto his horse, like what an amazing scene. And then he gets cut down by his own father with the crossbow before he could win the duel. And like him and Blaise having a kind of moment there at the end where the brother like yelled to his men to go to Blaise's side, and when Blaise told him like I would have followed you anywhere, like there was some really emotional heavy stuff going on between the brothers, and the brother was like oh I didn't know that, like yeah, there like that sort of stuff, that really deep personal family stuff like hit me really hard emotionally. That was probably one of the points that I was
that you were getting misty.
Yeah,
did it make you misty?
Seeing the words on the page. Oh wait, someone else is in here. Yeah, make sure you don't stay because we are
man.
In spoiler territory here. But yeah, thanks for dropping by, Zamar.
But I mean, isn't GGK like? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Chris.
Oh no, I think with the it comes back to I think with the brother. I think even if he knows the father's motives and ideas are very questionable, I mean, there's still a part of us that always want that respect from our fathers, even if they're our fathers are tyrants or something along these lines. But I think that was always something he was internally struggling with throughout the most, and then until that end where he's starting to lose his honor. And why are we all forgetting the brother's name here?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
But I think it was just kind of like that final nail that he was never going to get the respect from his father, but he was going to earn his respect with his brother, getting that, we all want our family. We all need that in our lives. And I think it was just kind of that final moment that he needed. Unfortunately, it came, too late.
The little bits of brotherly backstory we get are just so heartbreaking. Like we get them later on in the book too, where it's like the father didn't want Blaise, like I think practicing with sword fighting because he wanted him to become in the clergy, and he like stopped. He like beat Blaise, but he also Ronald. But like the father,
I have everybody's name written down except the brother's name.
Yeah, the father. Albert was the father. Albert, is that the father? Albert. Wait, what was his name again? Galbert. But like he beat Ronald also, like when they were kids, and then Ronald wasn't able to like practice with Blaise anymore. Like the little bits of backstory we got about the family were just utterly heart-wrenching.
Yeah,
and like they were so traumatized and abused by their father.
Yeah.
And
yeah, but I mean, again, he's treading such classical story tropes here, right? Where two sons are having to wrestle in this family drama, one not letting go of trying to achieve their father's approval, and one realizing he has to rise up and overcome the patriarch to become the leader that his patriarch is. Goes all the way back to the Greeks, Oedipus. I mean, what a classic strand that runs through this for this family drama to play out, right? Just a master of storytelling, infusing that, because that's so written through our DNA. That's a story we'll connect with immediately, right?
Yeah, it made the final kind of conflict so much more meaningful and high stakes, because if it was just the king, the evil Joffrey like young king, like it would have had much less of an impact kind of facing off against that threat than the father coming and having to be this thing that the two sons have to kind of overcome and fight against, both militarily but also kind of emotionally. Oh man, that the ending between all of them was just like continually ripping my heart out.
Yeah, Shakespearean. And the dad's there saying, even though you ran away, I've been in control of your destiny the entire time. I instigated all of this. You're a pawn on my board. You'll never get out from under my shadow. And he's got to raise up and do it. And Ronald couldn't until the very end. Couldn't until it was too late. Tragedy,
But
Shakespeare,
but it wasn't even too late, because I thought, for instance, like GGK was so cruel at this point, because we thought Ronald is gonna have this successful moment, defeat the king in the duel, but no, that can't happen. But he still is alive. He tells his like second in command, like, go tell the soldiers to change sides. But then that guy got shot.
Yeah,
That's
what the moment needed.
Ronald's turn at the end is not going to actually affect anything, but he was able to shout, and his men did hear him, or they were able to see at least what the scene that played out, and they got the gist of what happened, and they saw, Galbert, shoot their liege lord, Ronald, and so his sacrifice there at the end, and his defense of his honor and his change actually did have meaning and was crucial for how the battle went.
Yeah. Absolutely. But his moment as a virile opposing force to his father, that window had closed.
Right? Yeah.
Because he had gone from being the king's champion to, past my prime and just become a drunkard from sorrow.
Yeah.
And, so that's what it's like. Oh, God, so tragic.
That was just such
so tragic.
A tragic, like, secondary, like, pretty minor character there, pulling emotion out of me from a secondary character. Like, man, that is not.
So
common
was that
at
the
all.
moment then, Ben? That the moment you?
That was one of the many moments. Like, that might have been the first one towards the end that started it. And once I was in that really, like, breaking down emotionally, like, it just then didn't stop. It was then continued because when
those scenes after the war were just like
when
one after another.
When I thought Urte had just stormed off, and I thought Urte was now going to side with Galbert, and when his men come, and I'm like, oh, this is the end. Like, Arbonne's falling. Like, we gave it a good go. We had a good plan, but we can't overcome these numbers, these odds. And then Urte's men go into the back and bypass, Blaze's side and strike Galbert's side. It was this incredible moment. And then when Urte is dying, and this is a character I'd not really thought much about throughout the whole book, kind of wrote him off as just like this, like, gruff person who's like getting in the way of like Arbonne's peace and defense. And like we always saw him from the outside, from other people's perspectives who had a reason to like dislike him.
From the prologue on. From the prologue on, right? Yeah.
And then when he's dying and wounded, he's just been giving his life to defend Arbonne. And he's saying, like, actually, I worked out this plan with the Countess so that we would play act and pretend like that I was switching sides, and I'm actually defending Arbonne, and you actually didn't know and understand me, but I loved Elise. Like, oh my God, I'm getting a little emotional just thinking about that scene. That he's dying and he's like bearing his heart, and we now realize, like, we didn't know this person at all, and Bertrand was wrong about Urte, and like, oh, maybe we weren't being fair to Urte because we'd been on Elise's point of view from the start, and so we just wrote him off like Elise did, and realized, like, oh no, like, maybe Elise didn't treat him very well or didn't give him a chance, or maybe they just were not a good fit. But ended up feeling so sympathetic for him, and like that was another moment there toward the end. It was so tragic and emotional.
Yeah.
And it's like
so many moments there. I was just
so many. And you know what? You know where it comes from for me? It's like every character motivation is completely true, right? Like, I can even Urte at the end, and that moment, right, when they charged past, because you're waiting for that, right, Ben, and they charge past, like that moment. But then it's completely earned. The motivation is completely true and earned by that character emotionally by the end when he tells you what it's all about. And I walked away from this book, and someone was asking me, like, well, what do you think? What it's about? And I said, search your soul for the most important thing to you. Some people will be faith, some people will be family, some people will be country. It's about every one of those things and more, and why they're important, to us individually and as a culture. And every character motivation you completely believe and buy because they're doing what they feel is completely true and right for their conscience, and it's earned and true, and that's why we become emotional, you know?
Yeah. Oh, Jake is so true about my reaction. When we're getting ready for the final battle and they're putting their plans into place, I also was so annoyed at Signe because she put Bertrand in charge because she's like, well, he knows this land the best and he can coordinate the forces the best.
I was just getting this sense of dread.
Yeah.
But even Bertrand trying to be true to his own conscience, saying, you know, if it's best for Urte, let him do it. Let him do it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, every motivation is true.
I felt like, oh my God, if this book ends with Arbonne falling, and it was like this book is called A Song for Arbonne. It sounds very final. It sounds very dark. It sounds like it's very ominous in those sense.
Yeah.
You know?
The song
sounds like it is going to be the fall of.
It kind of made sense. Like it almost felt inevitable that it was this Shakespearean, family feud that was gonna get in the way of Arbonne uniting and over a lost love, and it just felt like it made sense. But I was so annoyed at Signe too that she was risking Arbonne by angering Urte and
losing half the troops.
But isn't that, I just loved it. But at the end, right? You're still at that moment. You're wrapping up the book. We're at the end, right? When Urte makes that choice and the horses charge past. And even at that moment, or right before, I'm thinking, the song could be a requiem. Like, this could, but to hold the tension, to hold the suspense for that long through the book and not know what's coming, like, that doesn't happen all that often with the amount of books we read. Like, we can generally see a plot thread and kind of figure out where it's going to go. That never really happened with me in this one.
I had no clue. I had, just like you're saying, with the title and with how many tragic things have been happening, like, I had no clue if this was going to go full tragic ending or if there would be some sort of happy ending for Arbonne. Like, it went down right to the wire on that. And then we don't even know what's going to happen until the arrow falls from the sky and kills the king and then stops the battle. And I'm like, oh my God, Arbonne is safe. Like, man, it was such a relief. I had such like a visceral sense of relief that it was over and that they were going to live peacefully side by side right now. And and
it's funny because, like you mentioned earlier, John, this wouldn't have been impactful if it hadn't been for that initial like love triangle tryst between Urte and Bertrand in the beginning of the book. It made each of these like little conflicts because you are worried that there might be some sort of like possible civil war going on, or like part of Arbonne gonna deflect and go over to the other country of Gohard, and you're just waiting for these moments, and it was so impactful to see that wasn't true. The Arbonne people stick together when the going gets tough. They may be very all about poems and love and things, but when it comes to defending their country, their strength is in a different way. It's in their passion.
Warrior poets, right? And that little fulcrum of history plays out in a grand sweeping battle when he chooses country over his own ego from that tryst that happened and that feud that's been going on for years. And it's like these fulcrum moments in time of the history of the book that people have to raise up to what's history calling them to do, overcome their own ego, and it wraps that tapestry of character around that moment in time. And beautiful.
And it sort of gives Urte a little bit of a payback to Bertrand because he left him in the dark. So it was kind of like, haha, a little.
And it was Urte who really saved the day. It was responsible for like and stealing Bertrand's thunder kind of at the end. It was
completely,
really cool
completely.
Moment.
And it had been planned all along, all along.
And another emotional moment, like all throughout, I was just like spending like 6 hours like getting through this whole ending part of the book, and so it was all hitting me emotionally. But then after this ends, Blaze is confronting Ariane like in that house again in the woods.
Oh yeah.
And like
yeah.
we'd gotten some scenes with Blaze and Ariane where, you know, they had a bit of like a tryst at one point in the middle of the book, and it seemed like they had a real connection too, like on top of the physical attraction they had for each other. But Ariane's married to a nobleman that Blaze respects, but who's kind of like we are led to infer that, you know, her husband is gay, and that they don't have like a, you know, any kind of like romantic relationship, Ariane and her husband. And she's kind of pining for romance and a kind of different kind of love. And she, you know, kind of wistfully wants to continue something with Blaze at the end. And Blaze is like, no, I respect your husband. Like, I can't do this. Like, and then they realize that, you know, we hear finally the backstory that we've been hinted at for throughout the entire book of like what happened the night that like Elise died. And we learned that at that moment. I was so emotional around all this. We're like, well, their love kind of has to go unrequited, and Blaze ends up having to marry the heir to all of Arbonne, who was this twin that we didn't know existed until the very end, when Ariane tells the whole story after Urte died. And man, like that was so emotional when Ariane goes and tells people the story, and then we hear it that she had gone through the stormy night with the little baby, and gave it back to the priestesses on the island. And we had actually met this character at some point, just a very minor character in the book. Renette, right? Or yeah.
And I think it's really important here, since we are getting towards that end here, and I hope people read that final part of the Verdun with Lasso, where she talks about Blaze. And not only is the daughter the second wife to Blaze, so we know that he eventually marries. I'm going to guess it was Luxana.
I don't think so. I think he moved on. I think we have no clue. I can't believe Kay did that at the end, where he's like, oh, Blaze ended up having 2 wives. I'm like, what? You can't tell that. I would like to believe that at some point Ariane's husband died. Ariane's husband died, and
he went back,
died, and he and Ariane, you know, finally consummated their love, and in their older age. That's just my making that up. But I think he moved on from Luciana, because he basically was like under a spell of Luciana, and then when he basically,
but he got out of that.
Ariane like broke him out of that. He realized like love didn't have to be and sex didn't have to be this like, you know, soul sucking toxic thing, that, you know, it could be a real mutual give and take. And I think he started to fall for Ariane after he had, you know, his first night with her, and realizing like, oh, he's so thankful for Ariane for breaking him out of his spell with Luciana. And so I think he was never interested in her again, because it was kind of more toxic thing going on.
Part of me also thought it might have been like maybe a political marriage where it still happened, even though, but you're right. I think that does make more sense. And then we find out Lasso has a child by somebody unknown. And so yeah, I don't know. You're right. It's just like, oh, why are you doing it this way?
Lasso at the end was also tragic. Just the way that when we were with her, that she was always like looking at Blaze, because she was kind of in love with Blaze, but knew that she couldn't even tell him that he viewed her as a friend, and it was like a platonic thing they had going that she valued, and she was just gonna have to like suppress her love for Blaze. And the way she was just like always looking at him longingly, like towards the end of the book, I felt so sad for her, because it had me thinking about, you know, unrequited love in my past, in my youth, and, you know, going through a lot of the same things. And man, Kay did that so beautifully through a lot of the POVs here. That just one of the many things that had me emotional at the end.
And there was such a theme of sacrifice through, right? And like even Lisette sacrificing her true feelings for what she found important. The twin that comes at the end is not going to be a priestess and blind herself and go on to her destiny that she feels, because she's going to sacrifice that for what her country needs more so. Right. There's time and time again of sacrifice. So I'm with Ben. Like, I feel like the second marriage, like, had to be for love. Like sacrifice, everyone sacrificed for Arbonne, for the moment, for what they felt was important, and maybe he went on long enough to be able to just marry for love, right?
Oh,
like
yeah, I definitely believe the second marriage was definitely for love.
You hope.
I think the first marriage might have been for political reasons.
Yeah.
Oh, can we go back? I'm curious. John, you mentioned at the very beginning of this chat of a scene that you was like so cinematic and poignant. And was it?
Okay.
I have
Was
a
it
guess,
the stairway?
because-
Hit me with the guess.
For
Me with the guess.
Was it the
For
stairs?
me, it was
No, that was
was,
one of them. That was huge.
the scene that just blew me away in the middle of the book, where I'm like, oh my god, I am just like so touched by this moment. Was just like when Bertrand had a tryst with some. We were in the POV of some very like vain young woman, and like she was like excited to have this tryst with this famous Casanova nobleman, and afterward it's like dawn is happening, and she looks over and Bertrand's like playing the lute over by the window, and he's singing like a very longing tune, and then we turn to Bertrand's POV all of a sudden, and he's just still so sad about losing Alice, and that was just like such this quiet emotional moment that was really beautiful. That just not the type of scene that is in any of the other books I've been reading recently.
Yeah,
I mean
sure.
Okay, that's a great one, but
That's
the one for me, it wasn't Bertrand, and I can't remember the name of this troubadour's name, but there was like he's a wizened man, and he's an old master troubadour.
Oh,
it starts with an A. I think it's
I think it does start with an A.
Aurelian.
I think that might be
it. No, it was like an older one. That was it the troubadour of Bertrand's troubadour or Signy's troubadour?
Older
like
than Bertrand, right? Like older grand, like the master, right?
Jake, do you know the name of the troubadour we were talking about? But he then so he's a troubadour, right? So he's like a songwriter, but he's there. We're back in the troubadour's little bar, right?
Bursalard?
That's right. Aurelian is the younger one. So maybe Bursalard, but maybe
the other one.
But
one of the
anyway,
was it one of the two that died that got killed?
No. He was only in one scene in the whole book, I feel.
Oh, I mean, he'd been mentioned sevenral times, right? Like he's the master. He's the maestro. He's the master.
Out of nowhere, and
he comes in there out of nowhere, and everyone's like, he's gonna play, and it's like
so much respect. Yes,
he's
like taking his time, opening
walks up. And he takes out his lute, and
there's so
he
much
takes his time to tune it. He takes his time to find his moment.
Yes.
And then on the way up there, he says, are you going to sing a love song? It's like, no, it's not a love song. And he tunes and he gets it ready and he finds his moment. And he sings this song that would be like Captain Von Trapp singing Edelweiss. Every nationalistic moment of this place and time is wrapped up in these lyrics. And he sings this lovely song. And then he stands up and he's walking back to his chair and he says, well, I suppose that was a love song after all.
That's all we see of him. Yeah. That's all we see of him in the whole book.
Yeah, and it's like that moment right there for me was like transcendent, Like that's the book. That's the book.
Yeah. The roll credit scene, as Jake said.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was amazing. Yeah, I was amazed by the songs. The lyrics themselves just in the book are usually beautiful and meaningful and are important to the plot in some ways. But if I was listening to the audio doing it a lot immersively, but whenever I saw a song, I would go to the audiobook and make sure to listen, because you and Morton did an amazing job singing these songs with a beautiful voice and singing them mournfully, and invented some great sounding tunes for them that really fit perfectly, I felt. So, man, the songs, I guess you weren't listening to the audios very much or for the songs, but so you just got them through the text alone and they still had a nice impact. Yeah.
Getting and like you said, Ben, really I really paid attention to this lyric songs, and I confess when I see some of that in books, sometimes I'm not really invested. And I love music, don't get me wrong, I love music, but sometimes it's hard to get invested when you're reading it and just reading it, and you want to hear the music to it. But it's clicking. But in this case, I was like really wanting, because I was like, oh, I know there's meaning in here. Oh, I know he's gonna like, there's gonna be so much about the story that I'm reading in here in this. And yeah, I really paid attention to those lyrics.
Yeah,
And it was-
he's too much in control, right? He's too much in control for it not to be.
And I'm glad it doesn't go for pages and pages. It's just like a couple of like three or four little sonnet, little paragraphs, and that's it. You know.
Yes,
and it's so impactful. Yeah.
And the effect that the singing has on everyone around them, like that was the amazing. I felt like I was there in the room, and just getting the effect wherever we were when there was a song. It always had this really strong effect on everyone around them, that they became more mournful and in tune with their surroundings, and quieted down and gave them their full attention. And it unlike any other songs I've seen in books, where you felt like just completely transported along with everyone in those rooms where the music was happening.
Yes.
Yeah, really, really amazing stuff.
Absolutely. So yes, this was everyone's first.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like of a two minds when I start a new author. Like, do I want to start with their earlier stuff, their more recent stuff? Do I want to go for the things that they're most famous for? Things that are like, because this, I feel, I just genuinely, maybe it's also going to be nostalgia for my first GGK, but I have a really tough time imagining anything could top this book, because I had such a very personally powerful like experience with it.
Yeah.
So like, I'm worried that, you know, everything's not going to
go downhill from here.
But
I don't
like it. Maybe
I don't know if he'll connect as personally, but he's obviously a master storyteller in complete control. So I can't imagine that he's not going to spin a yarn for me that I won't be completely caught up in. But for so many reasons, this was just very personal.
Yeah, I think it was good to start with this book, even if you feel like it might, drop off from here on out. I think, and it's tough because we're gonna maybe be used to his writing, and I'll be kind of curious if that changes. This is kind of where I went back to asking that question from Vara and or not Vara, Zara and Laura, if this is prominent in other books too, if this style of writing and the way he presents material, the way he creates characters is going to be like a consistent kind of thing, and just continue to surprise us each entry we read too.
This was
because for a lot of people this is not their favorite. For a lot of people this is
really
not
I've heard Lions is a favorite, which is why I almost don't want to read that one next. Like we'll be starting with like two of the ones,
the strong ones.
People tend to have the strongest experiences with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I could be swayed. I could be swayed.
I'm open to whatever. I have a couple on my shelf. So I have Tagana, and I have Lions, and I have, I think, the first book of the Serentine Mosaic.
Sailing to Serentium. That one is interesting. I know it is like a version of the Byzantine Empire and about mosaicists, and that's just like a cool premise.
I just have Lions. But I can pick up whatever.
We can certainly discuss it. Yeah.
But
maybe we can get Zara borrowed on again too.
Mm-hmm.
Lions, I know, is a very just like big, sprawling political epic based on kind of wars going on in Spain between different cultures. Mm-hmm. And that feels like a pretty heavy, like big epic scope book. And
Ben's not up for that. Ben's not up for that.
Ben's not ready. Ben's not ready.
I don't know if I am. I know it'll probably be amazing. I don't know if I'm ready. Like I have to get over this one first. Like, this one
oh yeah. We'll definitely take a break before we start the next.
Yeah, I for a bun destroyed me.
Yeah. Yeah. You were really emotional, Ben.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, and it's actually rare. Like I, in my memory, like out of the many hundreds of books I've been reading the last just 6 years, only like I could probably count on my hands how many have pulled an actual tear out of me. So it's not a high percentage of books that get me that emotional. And this got this definitely wins the award for the most. I often feel invested, and I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling a little amped up, or I'm feeling like, oh, I'm feeling the first stirrings of a little like tragic sadness or catharsis bodily, but usually it's not overly much, even in a great book that I'm really engaged with. But this one just brought me to a place I'm not used to.
Yeah, bravo, my friend.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
That's great. That's great
Yeah.
to hear.
Yeah, I couldn't even believe it. I'm like, what is happening? Like the Earth scene, like this is such a minor character. I'm like, I can't even continue reading.
I like everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to live happily.
Yeah, no, it was brutal going to the last day where I just was powering through the whole final act and the falling action.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And, a lot of hours on that.
The war. The wrap.
But what's interesting is I didn't feel the need to read too quickly because I usually try to devour books as fast as I can when I love them. But this one, I felt the prose was so rich. I was taking my time, but each chapter felt like a short story almost, where it had its kind of setup and rising action and closure. And he would end each chapter on a poignant moment or imagery. And I felt like, wow, I want to sit on this for a little. I don't need to continue. And so I was taking my time with this, really.
Was there a thing that maybe didn't click with you? I'm kind of curious. That maybe.
Interesting. I would say at first the mustache twirling villain of King Adamar, I tend not to love that. Like in the Farseer trilogy with Hobb, like with Regal being a very mustache twirly villain, like when everyone else is so complex and three-dimensional. That was the thing I didn't love, but I thought he was gonna play a bigger part as the antagonist. So the fact that he was really sidelined, like it became almost a non-issue. That's the one thing I can think of that I maybe didn't click with, but it was such a minor thing that played very little role beyond that initial chapter 4.
Fair enough.
What about you, Chris? Anything that didn't? There was a whiff for you.
I think there was a couple times in his writing where he switched POVs
very quickly,
without a break. You know, usually there were breaks in the book, you know, in the chapters where when we switched to character, but there was a couple times when a scene is playing out and it starts with one and then kind of ends into another one, and I'm like, wait a minute, oh, so now we're in her head or his head, you know. And
there was also some omniscience. There was also some jumping to omniscience. Like I'm so used to very clear like POV switches.
Yes,
like
that's what I'm saying.
Breaks with it, or new chapters, and then I was thrown off a little when I was like totally on board with the actual head hopping. I was like, I'm on board. I don't mind head hopping at all. It doesn't really throw me out if I can catch it and see what's going on. And it was the veering into omniscience which threw me off a little bit. I'm like, wait, is this from the POV of a character, or is this like an omniscient narrator all of a sudden? Because I am so not used to that. And so I didn't mind.
Yeah, I wasn't used to that either. Yeah, I think that was probably it. But it didn't. I want to say for the record, it didn't take away from any sort of enjoyment. It was just something I had to get used to, I guess, kind of thing for me. Yeah. John, how about you?
5-star. I don't know. I had no problem.
Good. Awesome.
I had no problem.
Easily 5-star. Like I said,
I couldn't.
It's a minor gripe for me about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that King Adamar, when he first bumbles onto stage there, I mean, to me, he was such a red herring. I mean, I knew there was no way he was
important.
He's a puppet.
Yeah.
And I knew that, okay, the real villain will please stand up here in a minute.
Yeah.
So, and the switching POVs, you know what? I'm not even sure I noticed. I mean, you're more of a writer, Chris, so I'm sure that stuff hits you harder. I'm just in behind the eyes of the character, one to the other, and each one, like I say, I could track the motivations, and I found them to be completely true and interesting. So it's like I never stumbled over that. I just didn't notice it.
Yeah, I think
and then of course the tenses.
For switching POVs, for switching tenses, for switching POVs, for switching into omniscience every now and then, like I often was just did not really stumble over it and stayed immersed. So I think he did all these switches really deftly. It is just different from most, modern fantasy written in the last like
and
20
I think
years. Like
that's it.
they're usually clear in their POV switches.
And I haven't, I think that was it. And I was getting used to separating myself from reading the modern fantasy that I read to I feel like nowadays you can't get away with that as well unless you are an established writer, well into your field, that they just let you do whatever you want to. But I feel like, yeah, exactly. I feel like there were no rules, and he handled it really well, though. It took me a moment to get from the present tense to back to the past tense, but I felt like it was deliberate because it was the present tense was saved for those scenes in the other country up north. So I felt like at least it was like deliberately placed in certain scenarios. It was almost kind of like it was like somebody was telling us the story in like maybe a long sort of verse. And I thought, oh, maybe this is like a Torb or relating the scenes that were happening to Rosala, shared this information with a troubadour, and like they're telling a story, and that's why it's all in this present tense, which is often that you see in poetry and all that in music.
Oh wow, I did not even notice the switch in tense. It was
I didn't either. I didn't either.
So immersive. Yeah, it just like whatever effect he meant it to have, it probably had some subconscious effect on me.
That's funny because the writer picked that up. Like my wife is a writer as well, and she'll throw a book down like change tense, can't do that. I mean, she'll throw a book down because it's like, oh, the point of view is shifty, changes tense. It's like I don't have time for that. It's like she got her, that MFA starts, that meter from her MFA program starts going off, and she can't. And it's like, I didn't see a thing. It was a great story.
I mean, yeah, this made me wish the writers took more risks with breaking rules. Now,
I agree. I think
using some omniscient narration all of a sudden to give you some information or just a perspective that you can't get from a character's perspective that you've set up. Like the third limited POV does limit the author because you're totally limited to the thoughts and what observations of that character. And so it makes me almost wish more authors did break the rules or head opt a little bit to give you the exact POV you want in that scene for maximum impact.
Yeah,
it worked.
Yeah.
You did a good job with it. I mean, it just took some getting used to, is all.
Yeah, I guess I'm a really when I read, I see it all. Like a real kind of visual.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just like he's just shifting lenses to give you a different perspective. So it's like I didn't even notice. I guess it just played in my head.
It was along for the ride.
Yeah,
man, it was. I knew one of the reasons it took me so long to read GGK is because I kind of knew, just had this good feeling, after seeing over years on BookTube of people trying him out and having powerful reactions to the books. And it's just sometimes you see people just gushing just from the bottom of their heart about the reads. And when you see a lot of people had a really powerful experience and it seemed really deep of an experience, that I kind of knew GGK was someone that I was going to have to wrestle with at some point, but it was going to be heavy. And so I was almost fearing it, knowing that it's going to be a little bit denser than you normally read. You're not gonna be able to fly through it. And, it might be heavy emotionally, and maybe, I've been having more escapist entertainment fun a lot of the time. And so I've just been, he's been on my TBR for so many years, but I've just been always I'll get to Tigana this year. And then I don't. And then so I just need to thank, you both so much for getting this going and being the impetus for me finally, because I think easily just from this first book, he's going to be a favorite author of mine that I'll cherish, and can't wait to go through his whole oeuvre. And it's nice that it's not that big. There's not that many different books and series to have to do. So, I like that it's even not too intimidating to go back, read everything he's written, but then to be able to come back to, special books. I'm really looking forward to returning to Song for Arbonne at some point, and a treasured friend coming back to.
And it's great because I think in a majority of our reads, I'm sure are all like some sort of series or some.
A lot, yeah.
And it's nice to kind of take a break and say, "Hey, let's sit down for for a month, read this one book, and that's it. There's no more books to this, so we're not obligated to okay, now we got to do the next book. Okay, now we got to do the next book. But now it's just a matter of when we decide we want to read one of his next standards.
Yeah. But
And
like Ben said, like he packed all this into one book. Like that's crazy. Crazy.
It's the most impressive book I've ever read. And before coming to adult fantasy and sci-fi more recently, like in college and my post-college years, I was doing a lot of classics or literary fiction. And I read a lot of amazing books of all kinds and just, huge classic pieces. And you can see they're a great achievement. But this is the most impressive book I've ever read because it had me so invested in the plotting and the setting and everything, the themes and the characters, main characters, side characters. And it just had me personally, emotionally invested in it. And it was just, it felt deep and at the same time, just incredibly immersive and a fun ride too. Like it wasn't all grim and heavy. Just, it did so much in one book. It's just astonishing. I just can't believe how good GGK is. Like I had high expectations, but I had no clue he was capable of this.
And it got you softy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get an emotional response, man. That's pretty cool.
It did. Yeah. Did it pull a tear out of either of you at any point? Did it get either of you?
I mean, I was invested in Arbonne. Like I said, when things just started getting destructive, when they started invading and doing the brutalization of the priestesses and burning and the mutilation of all the men and the everything, I was just like, I did not want this to happen. Usually, I mean, of course, nobody wants this to happen. We've read books where war is taking away the innocence, but there is something so magical about this place, and it just hits because of I feel like I'm an artist, and I feel like I just have this love for this world, and we reflect it in the real world where so much violence is happening, and I think it's like we don't want this to take place in our world, and I think
can we make a place for beauty and art and transcend
why does everything
reality,
have to be corrupted? Why does everything have to be destroyed? That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And
so well put. And just on that front, near the end, another emotional moment that I forgot about, when the final battle is about to happen, and Galbert brings in the two jogglers, the two troubadours that they had captured, and we had only met them like a few times, but like Lisseau knew them like really well, and like one of them was dead and mutilated, the other was still alive and mutilated, and like when they're able to put him out of his misery, and like Lisseau is just beside herself in pain, and like even other people who just knew them tangentially, like because they were famous like troubadours and singers, were like so upset because it was like just
the violence of it, the violent act of it.
The violence, the attack on beauty, the attack on art and beauty, and like the softer, more beautiful things in life is this war on that, as well as just like a political war. And it felt so important and tragic that we could hold on to this somehow and resist this wave of war. And man, that to start that whole like battle sequence off with, that was such an intense thing, but it was incredible because that brought the whole musical art theme like right to the forefront at the moment where it's like this political war is about to play out.
Yeah.
But this theme that carried through
there was a lot of symbolism to that.
The beauty and the poignance of the softer side of life, and romance and music and art, and the quieter moments, that it's those are the things that we transcend our physical reality a bit with those things.
Oh, absolutely.
And reach a higher plane. Yeah.
For Lisette to see that, to experience that depth of loss, and then use it by the end of the book in her art to reflect what they have all gone through and overcome. You kind of get to see the power of art
And I think
to
and I think
transcend.
and I think it was perfect through her eyes, because I think of all the characters, she's the most disassociated with any kind of violence. Everybody else had experience with some sort of violence at some point. Even Rosala, everybody knows the political intrigues and all that. But Lestat is all about music, all about life, all about having fun. And, all of the scenes with the fair and the other thing they did, the festival, they were all with her point of view. So to have her be in her point of view during probably one of the most violent aspects that we see visually, I think was just perfect on his point. So there's a lot of unnecessary violence, or no, not unnecessary, necessary violence that needs to be written, that I think Guy Gavriel Kay did so well here to give us that impact in those emotional moments, like we all had, I think, at some point in the story.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's not the political class. She's not in the room where it happens, as the song goes. But she's
all
artist.
about the beauty and the art.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's a good spot for us to wrap up. I think gone on for more than 2 hours gushing about this masterpiece.
Yes.
This utter staggering masterpiece, and it was so fun to do it as a buddy read and be able to see your reactions along the way too. So that was great. It was
guys. I have to thank both of you, just like Ben did. Like, this was the whole reason to start doing this, is to hang and talk with people that love books like I do, and to go through this journey with you has been just special.
Yeah, absolutely, ditto. And it's unfortunately Zara couldn't join us, but it was fun watching the
next time
in the book, and hopefully she can join us on the next GGK read. Yeah.
Thank you for so many people throughout this have been commenting in the chat, and a lot of people who left when we got into spoilers. Hopefully you went on to read it and love it and came back and watched, and appreciated us exploring it all. And thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Jake.
Yeah, so it's fun when you love something and then you watch other people like reading it for the first time or going through it, and they come on board and join you on that train.
Finally, Ben. Jake's only been trying for years.
It's true. I've also been trying to get him to read Shadows of the App by Adrian Tchaikovsky for years.
Oh, yeah.
So he hasn't done that. So I don't
read
feel
that
too,
either.
I haven't read it either
yet.
Bad.
Yeah.
How long of a series has that been?
It's like 15 books or something.
No, it's just 10. Just 10. That's a 10 book.
Just 10.
It's 10.
Just 10.
But it's not like Malazan though. They're like the size of 5 Malazan books together. So
okay.
But it's great. There's so many awesome things out here in fantasy and sci-fi and historical fiction, literary fiction, like that, people are passionate about. And when you dive in and things meet and exceed your expectations and have a powerful experience with it, there's nothing like it. It's just
absolutely
it brings so much joy to my life and fulfillment. And
100%. Can't wait to read the next one with you guys.
Absolutely.
Or we'll have to decide on what that is. And even if Lions is intimidating, I'm going to do it at some point. Maybe
get over Ben. Get over the intimidation. Get over the intimidation. You were intimidated at this one.
I was.
Look how short this one is, and this is about Vikings. Like this one's less than 500 pages.
Ben's like, I had this book. This is what we're.
No, I pre-bought. I actually have every GGK book. I always look for books on sale, like on bookoutlet.com or in used bookstores. So I'm always on the prowl for things on my TBR. I just found this was the last GGK book I did not have, and I found this mint condition hardback at an amazing used bookstore near me in New Jersey. Second Time Books. If you ever are in like southern Jersey, kind of near Philadelphia, they have a huge sci-fi fantasy section, and both have a section of like MMPBs and like bigger hardcovers and trade paperbacks. So, but yeah, I was so lucky to find this, my last GGK book to complete my collection. I was so confident I would love GGK. I've been amassing the whole collection of his books. So I have them all ready to go, including Lions. So that's no issue. It sounds like we all have that one, and Sarantine Mosaic's another one that I want to try, because I think I want to stick to some of his earlier ones, like this one and Sarantine and Lions or Tigana, just to kind of get the feel of his like growth or development as a writer.
One of them is a series of. I know the Sarantine Mosaic is 2. The Tapestry one is how many? That's also 2. Or
that's
3.
A trilogy, but that's like the big outlier in his works, because it's a whole different like subgenre.
That's one of his earliest, if not his earliest.
Yeah, that's his debut stuff. Yeah, and there's wide-ranging reactions to that one. At some point, I'm definitely going to give it a go because I'm curious. But
we could do Tigana and stay early. That's early, right?
Yeah, that's the first thing after the Fionavar trilogy he wrote, I think. So that's yeah. These are all like his early historical standalone books. Tigana.
Cool. Well, we can make an announcement of it, definitely. Of what the next one
absolutely. We'll digest this one, and then we'll choose.
Thanks for coming on the channel. This was a joy of a chat. This is also why I joined BookTube, because I was watching people have spoiler chats about books that I had also loved, and be like, "Oh, that'd be fun if I could join in."
Right.
So yeah, this
I'm always behind because I'm always behind, so I never watch these live streams because I'm always behind. I'm like, I haven't read the book yet.
Now you're caught up. Now you're caught up.
So if anybody else puts out a Song of Arbonne live chat, I'm going to be in.
You're there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man, what a ride! And Jake said the first few in order is Fionavar, Tapestry, Tigana, Arbonne, and then Sarantine. So Lions is probably right after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Well,
awesome.
Tigana might work for us.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do it. I got it.
All
right. Thanks for running, everyone.
Bye.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thanks, everybody.